All right, everyone. I've got two past the hour, so we'll get started. Again, my name is Frank Santos. I'm the director of training for a company called Vanco, and we specialize in HDMI distribution and audio. If you guys are not familiar with us, I invite you guys to check out our website. We've got a whole slew of product, obviously with our four brands, with Vanco, with Evolution, with Pulse Audio and Beale Street Audio. We got you covered in terms of anything that's AV and more, even networking products. But again, the goal today is to go over our new matrix units that we're really excited about. Four SKUs, two basic, quote unquote, basic units, if you will, and two Pro Series units, 4x4s and 8x8s, along with two receiver options that give you a bunch of audio options, which we'll cover today. Again, please utilize that chat function. If any questions, I have my colleague Brandon White, who's our director of new product development on this presentation with us. So he's going to help me out with answering some questions. So again, feel free to ask any questions at all. So we'll get started. So again, going through our new HDBaseT Matrix family today. The first question is why? Why are we still focusing on matrix units when the big push, not only within our company, but the entire industry, has been HDMI over IP in terms of HDMI distribution? Well, matrix units are still a relevant product for residential applications with a small number of displays and sources. Quite frankly, if you have 8 or less displays, a matrix unit still makes a lot of sense. Okay. HDMI over IP is a great solution, obviously, and you can certainly create your HDMI distribution system, but it's still primarily designed for a much larger system. With that, HDMI over IP is still primarily a commercial solution. Now, we have definitely done some residential jobs, but I would say 95% of our HDMI over IP solution that's been installed has been in a commercial application. Coupled with that, with the past couple years that we have been selling our HDMI over IP solution, we've noticed a lot of people who are green to networking. Okay, and obviously networking is a huge variable with HDMI over IP. With matrix unit, no networking experience is really needed. Certainly, you can hook up your matrix unit to your network and control it via IP, but it's very simple, not as in depth in terms of knowledge what you need compared to HDMI over IP. Another reason matrix units, is a benefit compared to HDMI over IP, minimal latency. Okay, so if you're doing any sort of gaming system, whether it's PlayStation, Xbox, or even a computer for gaming system, there is latency with HDMI over IP. Again, not noticeable if you're watching your Apple TV cable box, but again, if you're certainly gaming, you will notice some latency. That latency is very minimal with matrix unit. Last and certainly not least is price. Okay, so HDMI over IP, while it's coming down in price, for an 8x8 system with an HDMI over IP, it is a bit more expensive than your 8x8 matrix unit. The cost comparison that we've done within our own solutions, matrix units compared to HDMI over IP. So again, that's the reason why we're still working with matrix units. It's still a lot easier. It is more of a plug-and-play solution. Because of this, the HDBaseT technology. Again, with HDMI over IP, it's a little bit more in depth. There is a lot of setup to be done, a lot more variables, including the network, what you're combining HDMI over IP with on the network, including your security, your cameras, your VoIP. All that can take away from HDMI over IP and vice versa. So let's talk about our Evolution family of HDBaseT matrix units. Like I mentioned, we have two different series, entry level and Pro series, with two receiver options that can be mixed and matched on any of the outputs on any of the matrix units we're going to be talking about. There is a quote unquote basic receiver and a step up receiver, which is the Pro receiver, which will give you more options that we'll cover. Now, in terms of the tech specs, we can extend over HDBaseT Cat 5e or Cat 6. We do highly recommend you use Cat 6. It'll extend 4K, 60 frames, 444 chroma subsampling, and HDR10 up to 131 feet or 40 meters. A new feature that we've added with these new matrix unit is the ability to scale on each output. Okay, that's very important. 4K to 1080p scaling. Why is that important? Because if you're using a matrix unit or even a splitter without scaling capability, let's say you've got 8 TVs hooked up to your matrix unit. The first 7 are 4K. The last one here is going to be 1080p. Without scaling ability, if you split out that 4K Apple TV source to all 8 TVs, it's going to handshake with each and every TV. And once it gets down to that last TV, it's going to say, okay, well, you're a 1080p display. I've got to drop down my resolution to 1080p. And all of a sudden, all your displays are displaying 1080p, even though it's a 4K display. Okay, so you're dumbing down the resolution there. With the scaling capability, we can say on the 8th output, hey, let's downscale for that lone output from 4K to 1080p without affecting all of the other displays, thereby maximizing the resolution at each and every display. So again, a very important feature and capability of these new matrix units. We'll talk about the receiver that can do that. And then the output, the HDMI outputs can also scale on the Pro Series units as well. The other big addition that we've added to these new matrix units, specifically for the Pro Series units, the abilities to send audio return channel back down. Okay, obviously with the advent of the smart TV, obviously with smart TVs having apps such as Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, when you're watching those apps on your TV, your source is now that TV, right? And there's got to be a way that we send audio back downstream to our surround system, right? Otherwise, we're enjoying Netflix, YouTube, and Hulu, not on our full surround system with our AV receiver, but on the 2 little speakers that are pointed down on your display, right? As displays have gotten larger and larger, they've gotten thinner and thinner. Pictures has gotten better. The speaker quality has actually decreased because, again, they're using much smaller speakers, right? So that is why ARC is very important. Now, with these matrix units, we can grab that ARC signal, take it back down through the Cat6 cable, and actually break it out at the back of the matrix unit, which, by the way, the Pro Series matrix units have a fully built-in audio matrix unit. Again, that's built in right in it. So not only are you getting an HDMI video distribution system, you're also getting an audio distribution system. Okay, so we'll cover that as well. Last but not least, how do you control these matrix units? Okay, it doesn't have an app. However, it is IP controllable with drivers available. So you'll see a TCP IP port on the right-hand side there. Simply hook that up to your network. Your network will give it an IP address, and now we can access the user interface of any of these matrix units from a computer, from a mobile device such as an Apple iPhone, iPad, or even an Android device. Pretty simple to use. I'll also give you guys a demo of what it looks like on the computer here. So let's talk about our entry-level HDBaseT Matrix units. 2 different flavors here, a 4x3 and an 8x6 option. Obviously, the first number there is the number of inputs. The last number is the number of outputs. So it is 4 inputs, 3 outputs. We're only counting the HDBaseT outputs. So it really is a 4x4 and an 8x8. Okay, so keep in mind it's just a combination of HDMI outputs and HDBaseT outputs. We'll do a deeper dive on the next slide of the 4x3. So again, you do get additional HDMI outputs, which gives you some flexibility there. Now, for those HDMI outputs, you also have some audio breakouts in the form of analog and digital, again, to break out audio to an amplifier or an AV receiver for that HDMI output. IR pass-through, so that way we can control whatever source needs IR, such as a cable box, a Blu-ray player, at any display we're sending that signal over to. Obviously, with Apple TV, it's a bit different. You can control that with your app or your iPhone. And again, 2 different flavors here. The 4x3 part number is EVMX4X3, and the 8x6 is EVMX8X6. So again, let's do a deeper dive onto the back side of the 4x3 just to go over the connections, which is really important, right? So on the left-hand side, the inputs, obviously you get 4 inputs for the 4x3, 8 inputs for the 8x6. Self-explanatory there. The outputs, again, is a mixture of HDBaseT and HDMI. So for the 4x3, the first three outputs are HDBaseT, and the fourth output, as you can see, is HDMI. Now, again, for that lone HDMI output, you do have digital and analog audio breakouts. Again, for the 8x6, outputs 7 and 8 give you the same capability in terms of the audio breakouts. Now, the IR ports. Now, keep in mind, the IR ports are assigned to the inputs and outputs, so they are routed, right? So that way, if we have 4 of the same cable boxes, you're only controlling that cable box that you're viewing on that TV and not all 4 at the same time. So that's very important. Okay, there is an all-in, all-out IR port, so that way you can send IR regardless of routing. So if you've got an audio distributed system or an AV receiver or an amplifier, we can control the volume no matter what display we're at using the IR system or the IR pass-through. And then last but not least, on the right-hand side, you do have that TCP IP port, like I mentioned. Hook that up to your network. That way we can access the user interface. The next port over is the RS-232 port. We do have drivers, third-party control drivers for Control4, Crestron, Elan, RTI, and URC for the 4x3 and 8x6. And then last but not least is the firmware update port, which we'll make available on our website, again, if any firmware updates are available. All right, let's talk about the Pro Series HDBaseT Matrix units. Again, 2 different flavors here, a 4x4 and 8x8. Now, for every single output, you do get a mirrored HDMI output. More on that on the next slide. But again, those HDMI outputs feature the ability to downscale from 4K to 1080p. Along with that, one of the other major differences between the Pro Series and our entry-level units is the built-in audio matrix unit that you get with the Pro Series. So again, not only are you getting an HDMI video distribution system, you're getting an audio distribution system as well. Again, more on that on the next slide. You also get routable HDMI source audio, whether it's the HDMI input or ARC. So whatever's coming in or out of the matrix unit, we can break out that audio, send that audio to any zone. For control, in addition to IR, the other major difference between the Pro Series and the entry level is the ability to send RS-232 signals to the display locations, okay, for third-party control. Again, 2 different flavors here. The 4x4 part number is EVMX44 Pro. The 8x8 is EVMX88 Pro. So again, just as the entry level, let's take a look at the back side of the Pro Series 8x8, which is the unit I'm currently testing. And obviously, again, self-explanatory, the inputs, 4 inputs for the 44 Pro, 8 inputs for the 88 Pro. But again, the major difference here is the outputs, right? The outputs, you get all of them, HDBaseT outputs and HDMI outputs. This gives you the ability on an 8x8, which we're looking at right here, to hook up to 16 displays, and actually more than that, because the mirrored HDMI outputs give you a lot of flexibility. Obviously we can hook that up to a local display. We can hook up an HDBaseT extender if you need to extend that signal over Cat6, or if you need even more displays, well, guess what? Just hook up an HDMI splitter to that HDMI port, and again, we can duplicate output number 1 to 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8, even 8 displays if you wanted to. Okay, so certainly a good option for a commercial application if you're doing a bar type application where you need TVs on each wall showing the same game if you wanted to, such as a Buffalo Wild Wings, for instance. Okay, so again, that mirrored output gives you a lot of flexibility. In addition to that, the mirrored outputs, the HDMI outputs, again, also give you the ability to downscale 4K to 1080p. Now, we can certainly downscale via the Cat6 HDBaseT out. However, we need a specific receiver, which we'll cover. Moving on to the upper left-hand corner for control, same deal as the entry-level units in terms of the connection. However, the main difference here is the drivers that we have. Right now, we only have Control4, RTI, and LAN. We are working on more drivers for the Pro Series units. The reason why we have more drivers for the entry level is because of the audio matrix unit that's built into the Pro Series unit. So it does take more time to develop these drivers. But again, we are working on more drivers for the Pro Series units. Again, you still have IR. You still have the firmware update port, and again, the TCP IP port for UI for the user interface. All right, the IR ports are the same. Again, they are routed just like the entry level units. Again, so that way we're controlling only that source that we're currently viewing. But again, the main difference here is the audio matrix unit that's fully built in with both digital and analog audio ports. Digital on the right hand side, analog on the left hand side. And again, we can take audio from anything coming in as an input, any output, or even an ARC signal coming back from those displays. We can break out on any one of these audio outputs. So full flexibility. So again, you have an audio matrix unit that's built in. I'll show you guys what that looks like on the user interface. What I kind of skipped over was on the left-hand side, the RS-232 portion over here. Again, this is where we can pass RS-232 signals to the display locations using that step-up receiver. All right, I see no questions. We'll keep it rolling. So again, a bit of a matrix comparison of all the features and benefits that we talked about, comparing the entry-level units to the Pro Series units. I've highlighted all the differences between the Pro Series and the entry-level. So if you guys need a copy of this table or this presentation, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to give you a copy of this presentation. All right, let's talk about the receiver options. As I mentioned, there are 2 receiver options that can be utilized on any one of the 4 matrix units that we just covered. Okay, again, able to be mixed on and matched on any of the outputs. If you want to add audio and scaling options, you would use a step-up receiver. If you want to add different options to the entry-level and Pro Series matrix units by adding either receiver option. So Brandon doesn't like when I use sort of a semi-modular, but it's sort of like that again, utilizing different outputs for different needs, right? So on output number 2, if you needed scaling or ARC, you would use a specific receiver for that. So let's actually cover those receivers. The entry-level receiver, part number EVRX HD2. Again, just to reiterate, with this receiver, we can extend over Cat5 or Cat6, 4K, 60 frames, 444, and HDR10 up to 131 feet or 40 meters. Power over cable, so you'll notice a power port on the right-hand side. You actually don't need it. As long as you hook this up to any one of the 4 matrix units, the matrix unit is sending power to the receiver, so you don't need to power this up, okay? You also have for control bidirectional IR pass-through, so that way we can control that source or even the display from the matrix unit. Okay, so if you wanted to turn on or off the TV from the matrix unit or the head-end location, you certainly can with these IR ports. Again, able to be mixed and matched. Okay, so let's talk about the step-up receiver, which is part number EVRX DSC. Now, this unit does all of the same stuff the previous receiver does, but also adds on the ability to downscale 4K to 1080p. So again, for any 1080p display, you want to use this receiver, okay, so that we can downscale 4K to 1080p. If you have ARC, if you want to send ARC audio back downstream, you need this receiver. So let's say, again, you have a smart TV that's ARC capable. All you have to do is hook up the HDMI to the ARC port of that TV, activate the ARC mode on this receiver right on the front panel here, and now we're taking that ARC audio signal back downstream from the HDMI signal through the Cat6, and now we're breaking it out at the matrix unit location. Okay, so that is a key feature, obviously, with all these smart TVs out nowadays with audio return channel. Now, there's also a built-in ARC backup plan in the form of this optical input. So if your TV does not have ARC but does have an optical audio output, no problem. All we have to do is connect an optical cable to this port and again activate the ARC mode, and now again we're taking that audio signal back downstream to the matrix unit. So again, you have a backup plan there. Last but not least, in addition to IR, you also have an RS-232 port. So again, we can send RS-232 signals from the matrix unit to the display location. So again, if you're using a third-party control system, with that third-party control system, we can turn on and off all those TVs all at once, right? So your bartender's not having to walk around the entire restaurant or the bar, having to turn off each and every TV individually. So again, part number EVRX DSC. So again, another table of all the features, specs, benefits that we just went through, highlighting the differences between the EVRX DSC and the HD2, the entry-level receiver. All right, let's talk about the user interface. So left-hand side is a screenshot of the user interface on a web browser. Right-hand side is on a mobile device, which is my iPhone. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to switch gears here from the PowerPoint, and let's actually show you guys the user interface. So all I've done is I punched in the IP address up top, okay, and that'll bring you to the user interface. Now, there is a default IP address, so you can certainly change that. You can set it from static to DHCP and vice versa. But I'm going to log in here and show you guys how easy this is to work even as an end user. So the first tab that you will see is the switching tab. All right, this is probably the most important tab, especially for an end user, where we can send any HDMI signal to any display. As you can see, it's in a grid format. Your inputs are on the left-hand side, your outputs are right up top, and all you're doing here is locating what source and what display you want to match up. So let's say you want to take that 4K Apple TV and you want to send it to the master bedroom. So all I have to do is locate the 4K Apple TV, locate the master, click on this box, turns green, and now you've instantaneously sent that 4K Apple TV source to the master bedroom. Simple as that. Okay. Now on your mobile device, it's going to be a series of drop-down boxes for each and every display. Pretty simple there. In addition to switching, let's say you don't want to switch each and every display individually, you can set up presets. Okay, that's what the scenes are on the right-hand side. So you have up to 9 presets that you can save. So that way, if you're doing a bar type application, if it's Thursday night football or hockey night on Wednesdays, you can have a preset for each and every individual sporting event if you wanted to. If you want to do a Super Bowl event that basically takes one source to all TVs, you can certainly set that up. Okay, so pretty simple there. The audio tab is the next tab over. This is where we can control our audio matrix unit. As I mentioned, you can take any audio source coming in or audio signal coming out or an ARC signal coming back to the matrix unit, and we can send that to any zone. So again, your analog outputs on the left-hand side, your digital optical audio outputs on the right-hand side. So let's say you set this up, you have 8 zones, and let's say the family room is SPDIF output 1. Okay, I can click on this drop-down box, and as I mentioned, I can take any audio coming into the matrix unit, any audio coming out of the matrix unit, or again, any ARC signal coming back from that smart TV, and we can send that audio to any zone. So it's fully flexible. Again, it is an audio matrix unit that's built right in. In addition to that, we can click on the volume selection here. We can set a maximum volume for each and every zone to make sure that the kids' playroom doesn't get too loud. Or you can actually control it from here, lower the volume or increase the volume, or even mute a zone from here if you wanted to. Next tab over is the configuration tab. Here's where you can adjust downscaling. Downscaling is enabled at default. You can certainly disable that. You have some other options here, including HDCP, but more importantly, EDID. So if you're coming across any compatibility issues, you can come in here, adjust the EDID for that display and that source to get picture on it. Now, keep in mind, we're utilizing HDBaseT technology here. HDBaseT is a very reliable transmission for HDMI. Rarely have any issues with it. In fact, the only issue I had hooking up my matrix unit, which I'm testing, was a very old Samsung monitor. It's probably more than 10 years old. Adjusted the EDID for that output, and guess what? I got display. So again, EDID, very important. Next tab over is the RS-232 tab. Again, here's where you can adjust your third-party control settings. The interface tab is where we can rename our inputs and outputs. As you can see, I've renamed each and every input, each and every output, so that way you're not dealing with input 1 to output 4. Here we can send the cable box to the master bedroom, for instance. Next tab over is the network tab. As I mentioned previously, there is a default IP address, which you can certainly change. And again, you can set to static or DHCP if you want your network to automatically find an open IP address unit or address for the matrix unit. Last but not least is the access tab. We can password protect the user interface. We can also lock the front panel. So if it's in a common area, the matrix unit is, you can protect it from kids pushing buttons on the front panel of the actual matrix unit. So again, that's just a short demo of the user interface on the web browser here on the mobile device. Same deal, it's just more compressed, but you have full functionality even on your iPhone or your Android device or even a tablet. So let's go back to the PowerPoint here. And then what I do want to wrap up with is just a couple of new Evolution products that we just released. I don't see any questions on the matrix unit, so we'll ask questions again at the end of the presentation here. So to wrap up, a couple of new, again, Evolution pieces that we just released. HDMI extender over fiber. Obviously with fiber, bandwidth is not an issue, so we can push out 4K 60 frames HDR. But the key feature on both of these units, there's actually two units here, is distance. Okay, over the multi-mode fiber modules that we include in the box, we can do up to 984 feet or 300 meters. Okay, if you want to do single mode fiber, you can certainly use single mode fiber modules. And now we're talking a long way. We're talking 6.2 miles or 10 kilometers. So now we're talking about sending HDMI signal across a campus from one building to the next, which is very helpful. Again, two different models here. The model that you're looking on the right-hand side is part number EVEX FBR1. Okay, that is with IR. If you need USB, we do have another unit that carries USB signals as well. So now you're talking about hooking up a keyboard and mouse, and your source is a computer or a security NVR, and now we're controlling that security NVR computer 6.2 miles away. Okay. Part number EVEX FBR1 for the unit that you see on the right hand side, and EVEX FBRK1 again with USB. Okay, let's talk about our video wall processor. So this is a brand new unit that we just released. It's a 4K 2x4 HDMI video wall processor. With this, we can set up obviously a video wall out of the box. It can handle up to 4 displays. So as you can see here, we actually have 2 units daisy chained, but again, out of the box, what you get are the ability to hook up to 2 HDMI inputs. Now the loop outs, we can connect a local display, or we can use the output or loop out output B to daisy chain to an additional unit, and we can expand upon this. More on that a little bit later. And then again, we have the ability to hook up to 4 displays on a video wall setup. Any configuration, whether it's a 2x2, 1x4, 4x1. Now going back to the daisy chaining, with daisy chaining the units, we can do up to a 16x16 video wall display. So pretty large display just by daisy chaining these units. There is a user interface just like our matrix units. There is a LAN port which we can hook up to our network, and as well as RS-232 with a user interface to control all of these features. So pretty cool video wall processor that we just released. Last but not least, a 4K HDMI extender over coax. Obviously, with this solution, it's more of a solution where you cannot run Cat6, or it's very difficult to, right? So we can still utilize that coax in the wall to pass HDMI signals. Now this supports 4K 60 frames and HDR10. In terms of range, we can do 330 feet or 100 meters. Again, accomplishing 4K 60 frames. If you want to do HDR10, up to 230 feet with HDR10 again. So again, extends over RG6 coax. I have tested this with RG59. It'll still pass signals over RG59. However, if you want to maximize the distance, RG6 coax is best. Will not work over mini coax. Just keep that in mind. Along with the HDMI signal, you do have bidirectional IR pass-through. Part number on this unit is EV4K2004. So again, just wanted to cover some new Evolution products that we just released. So these are currently shipping. One thing I do want to mention is our Vanco Online Training Center. Now, if you guys are not familiar with this, please visit this and register for it. We've got 2 awesome modules on HDMI over IP. So if you want to know more about HDMI over IP or even our solution called Evo IP, there's a module there within this site. There's also a module on our Beale Street audio speakers, our Sonic Vortex speakers. So again, if you guys are getting into audio and wanting to find out more about our Sonic Vortex speaker, again, 2 great modules on each subject. Very informative, very interactive. And then once you guys complete that, it actually opens it up for more resources such as short training videos, recorded webinars, case studies, and a tool called the Quick Reference Tool. Great tool to have on an iPad or on your mobile device, walking a job, finding out, hey, what kind of speaker do I need for this application? So feel free to scan that QR code with your mobile device. It'll bring you straight there, or you can access this on our website as well, vanco1.com. Just go to the training tab, and again, you'll find the link to the to our LMS. So at this point, looks like there's some questions. Looks like Brandon handled some of those questions, so appreciate that, Brandon. Looks like I've got a couple of questions that were directed straight to me, so let me read those off. Any matrix units larger than an 8x8? Yes, we actually have currently we have a 16x16 that's not part of this family that we just went through, so it utilizes different receivers. Doesn't have ARC capability or the scaling feature. However, again, 16x16 with HDBaseT. Next question, will the HDMI outputs of the 4x3 and the 8x6 scale? They will not. So if you want scaling on the HDMI outputs, you do have to move to the Pro Series, okay? So the Pro Series matrix units do have the ability to scale. Just keep that in mind. Question or feedback from Doug, may want to mention that your Vanco HDMI cables are certified by the HDMI certification panel. Very important. Great point, Doug. Appreciate that. Yes, we do have a couple series of certified cables, 4K and 8K HDMI cables. So great point, Doug. Appreciate that. So these are actually certified by HDMI themselves. It's got the label on it, and it's basically you're getting the best possible 4K and 8K resolution. Another question, is there an amplifier built in? No. So for if you're talking about the audio outputs, no, the audio outputs ideally would be connected to some sort of amplifier. Let's see here. Another question, you mentioned HDR10. Will the matrix units pass Dolby Vision? Yes. However, only via the HDMI outputs. It's important to note that the HDBaseT outputs will not pass Dolby Vision. They will only pass HDR10. Out of the HDMI outputs, you do have the ability of HDR10 and Dolby Vision. Okay. Any other questions out there? Feel free to unmute yourselves if you guys have any questions that you want to ask. Or again, utilize that chat log there.
Actually, I got one quick question from your session.
Yes.
You were talking about hooking up the splitters to the outputs.
Yes.
Does that become an issue with HDCP?
As long as you are utilizing an HDCP compliant splitter and your displays have HDCP, no, not at all. We've tested the outputs.
Your splitters are all HDCP compliant?
Yes, they are.
Oh, awesome, because so many of them out there are not.
Absolutely. Every one of our products is HDCP compliant. Obviously, if you find those HDMI splitters on eBay or Amazon coming straight from Asia, whether it's China or Taiwan, keep in mind some of those splitters may not be HDCP compliant. Great question, Doug. Appreciate it.
I have a question.
Sure.
The training classes that you offer, do you have certification, what do you call it? Continuing education points or whatever?
Not on our LMS. No, that is certainly something I'm taking a look at. However, we are doing expos which are accredited. Jeff, if you can do me a favor and shoot me an email. My contact information is right on top of the screen there. You can scan it with the QR code. And I believe with the pandemic, again, it was pretty tough, obviously, scheduling out these classes. However, it looks like we're doing some of these classes this year. Don't have the locations as of yet. We're still planning it right now. But if you can do me a favor, send me an email. I'll send you more information about it once I know.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you.
All right, I got a question for you.
Sure.
The HDMI extender over coax, can those be split? Or is that one connected?
If you're talking about the coax and using a coaxial splitter, no. But if you're talking about using an HDMI splitter and then multiple coax extenders, then yes, you could do that. But you cannot split that coax cable and then split it to multiple displays. You've got to split it at the HDMI end.
Got it. Thanks.
Great question. Thank you. Any other questions out there before we wrap up? All right. I will take that as a no. Again, my contact information is right on top of the screen there. If you guys have any questions at all, please let me know. I certainly appreciate your time this morning. Hopefully it was beneficial. If you guys need any more help at all, need to deeper dive into any one of our products or product categories, more than happy to take you guys on a one-on-one or even meet with your clients. That's not a problem. So please let me know how we can help. With that, thank you very much for your time. Hope everyone stays safe. Have a great rest of your week. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Have a really good day.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks, Frank. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just one little comment before you take off, too.
Sure.
Your Vanco RF IR extenders,
Yes.
fantastic units.
Oh, okay.
And I'm using them from floor to floor in my house. And right now I do have a really nice setup at home, constantly improving it. And yeah, they're leaps and bounds. I've been in this business for like 30 years, and they are leaps and bounds away from 20 years ago. We were using something called a leapfrog, and it was nothing but a pain. Where they work great.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's, with IR, it's, unfortunately, there's no standard. It's IR it's a constant battle, but it has really improved with some of the products that we've come out with, including a wireless IR kit as well. I'm not sure if you've seen that.
That's the one I'm talking about, where you convert the IR to RF, and then you have the receiver on the other ends.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I've got a few of those running around the house. Actually, in our house, I'm lucky enough where I've got 6 55-inch 4K TVs spread out throughout the house, and all of my equipment's in a rack in the basement.
Okay.
So having the RF IR extenders is like a godsend.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a great little unit too, because it's got an adjustment dial on there, which you can actually pair them up if you wanted to.
I've done that, and I've also used them on separate channels.
Got it. Yeah. For
the money, they're great. Love them.
Right.
And like I said, with the certified 4K, 8K HDMI cables, been great for installs I've done over in the Faculty of Medicine here.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very good.
Yeah, I really wanted the certified cables, and all the big manufacturers, they say, oh, we've got cables, but you don't want to pay for the certification.
Right. Yeah. It's, the certified cables have been a great thing for us. Obviously, Brandon's been working on it. In fact, I think he's working on longer length certified cables with HDMI themselves. So, look out for those. Obviously, the limitation of HDMI's length for 4K, the certified cable is 30 feet, and 8K is right now 10 feet, which is a bit on the short side, but we're working on it. We're working on getting longer lengths.
Sounds good. Have a great day, you guys.
You too. Thanks a lot, Doug. Appreciate your time this morning.
You're welcome.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.